Hogstye.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Hogside. This is your host, Alex Zeese, with you. I got Steve here. It is June 18th as we're recording this, just to give folks context, because we never know what's going to happen on the day.
No, we've been bitten by that a couple times where, like, we record a show and then the next day something, wild happened. We've been in that boat before.
There were times I remember us recording a show, and like 4 hours later, the team does something just amazingly stupid, and we're like, should we come back and do...
I think
it only ever happened once where we came back and redid a show because
right, because it was like we wasted an entire hour because of whatever news it was. Yeah.
And it was big enough where we had to do something.
And you never know with Washington what god awful thing's going to happen.
Yes, it's never good. It's never anything good.
No, it's always just chaos.
Right. And we got a lot of chaos to talk about at the front of the show, of course. I think we got the Ron Rivera fine. I'm just going to run through the list. We got Terry McLaurin, Ron Rivera's fine. And then, of course, let's start with what's going to happen on the Capitol Hill here. Congress invited Dan Snyder and Roger Goodell to come testify on their hearings. Roger Goodell said he'll testify, which was a little unexpected to me. Not surprised that Dan Snyder says he's got business plans over in Europe, a.k.a. he's going to hide out on his yacht in international waters during this whole thing.
That's the business.
Yes. He's in the business of, monkey knife fights in international waters. That's a good Simpsons reference if you don't know it.
So,
yeah.
I'm
Why
not
don't we
a full-time...
start with this whole thing?
I'm not a full-time litigator, but
No.
I used to be. I just don't do it anymore because it's kind of like, a blood sport a little bit, and you kind of you have to like that. And while I do enjoy an argument, it is very, very stressful in time, and you have to be away from your family and all that.
It's emotionally draining.
It's not even really emotionally draining. To a certain extent it is, but it was really more of like you got to constantly travel and all of that, and so I got out of it. But so if you were surprised or you expected Dan Snyder to testify, you were hopelessly naive.
Right.
A cardinal rule in representing someone under investigation is do not let them go voluntarily talk under oath, especially in front of Congress, where they don't hesitate to charge people with contempt of Congress. That Roger Clemens had that happen, and had to go to trial over it. So there was never a chance that Dan Snyder was gonna testify. And I gotta have my standard disclaimer here, by the way. There's no reason why this committee should exist. It's an embarrassment and a waste of congressional resources to have a congressional committee investigating one private, closely held corporation, not even publicly traded. These people ought to be ashamed of themselves and ought to go do something good for the world, not investigate a football team for the sake of building clout for themselves. And that's what's going on here. So with that out of the way, I was not surprised that Roger Goodell agreed to testify. This is his entire job, is to be the shield for the NFL. He's not under investigation. So it's one thing to, if they invited me to come talk about guitars, I could do that.
Right.
And I'm not under investigation, that'd be fine. But when they say, hey, Dan, we're investigating your team, well, even though we shouldn't be, for improprieties, why don't you come and testify in front of us? No, thanks. I would definitely have advised him not to do it also. And it's not really a matter of what do the fans want and blah, blah, blah. The fans are idiots for the most part anyway. It's a matter of protecting your client and not letting him, especially Dan, who my guess is probably has not testified a lot. And the reason why I say that, even Washington's been in a ton of lawsuits and everything, but there's this apex doctrine that says you can't just jump to if you sue Shell, you can't just immediately subpoena the CEO of Shell. You have to kind of build up to it and all of that. So
you have to prove your reason for wanting to get to
yes,
him.
you have to get up to a guy like that. So I would assume it's probably not been very often when so he's probably not, and he's not well spoken. He doesn't think well on his feet. You've seen his press conferences are terrible. You know, I mean, he's Mr. Thanksgiving, and it was, what was it, Christmas or whatever that time. And I don't think that was a joke. I think he just messed up. So point is, it wasn't going to go well. And the other thing is, when you're testifying in front of Congress, there's not a cross-examination here. You know, it's just a bunch of politicians grandstanding for the most part. And so you can't even correct an error. You know, if your attorney's sitting there and sees you, normally what happens is when your client says something stupid, you can go back and correct it and say, okay, did you mean to say this? And they say, no, I misspoke. And then the jury can evaluate it. But that's not the case here. It's just
because there's no jury.
No, it's just sound bites mainly. So he was never going to testify. He was always going to be busy that day. He says to this what I say every time somebody invites me to a party, which is that whatever day it is, I'm busy that day. That is what Dan Snyder's response was always going to be to this.
Right. Yeah, he said he's away on business. He has nothing to do. He has no business. There's nothing Dan Snyder's actually involved in.
Well, he killed all his businesses.
Yes, he's destroyed all his businesses.
Yeah, he used to have a bunch of businesses, but they kicked him out and fired him overall.
So one thing I will say, and this goes back 20 years now, which makes me feel very depressed. I used to work for a company that videotaped depositions, and I remember somebody I worked with, our most senior guy, did a deposition with Dan Snyder. And he said, he warned me then, this guy's the least charismatic, guy that you will ever see, and he will step in it all the time.
He's not well spoken. You have to have people who are quick on their feet. I've done a lot of depositions because, again, I did this for several years. And sometimes people are good and sometimes people aren't, obviously. But what it comes down to is, one, are they smart? And two, are they quick on their feet? Because if they're not either one of those, if they're not very smart but they're quick on their feet and they can kind of BS their way through an answer and not hurt themselves, you know, that's okay. Or if they're smart, then they can do mental battle with the attorney and end up not saying anything bad. Dan Snyder's neither particularly smart. I think he's probably of average intellect. If you measured him on an IQ scale, he just basically BS'd his way into money. And then he's definitely not quick on his feet. So and he's arrogant, super arrogant, probably thinks he knows everything. That is the worst thing, is that. And so
he's that level of intelligence where he thinks he's probably smarter than he is.
Well, and remember, he owns a professional sports franchise, so he thinks he's better than everybody else. You know, he's thought that forever. So he's the worst of every characteristic. So his attorney's probably horrified at the thought of him testifying, would be my guess.
And I mean, why wouldn't they be? I remember I was listening to, I can't remember what show it was. Somebody went on one of the radio shows here, and they said, I wish Dan Snyder would testify so I could just sit there and read the testimony and count the number of times he perjures himself.
It'd be fun. It'd be it'd be appointment viewing if it was ever broadcast.
Right, exactly. I think you as an attorney, and someone who's been such a fan of this team in the past, you literally probably could just go through any testimony Dan Snyder gives and says, this is a lie, this is a lie.
Oh, I know I could.
With a highlighter.
That was my job.
Yeah, exactly.
To determine
but this would be you doing it for sport.
Oh, it would just be fun. Yeah, just entertainment. That's when you're talking to attorneys, we have no real sense of humor. And so you have to get humor in things that the rest of the public would find awful.
Right. It's a little bit of a dark humor situation.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. Now, as a part of this, this stupid committee that shouldn't exist put out this bleeding heart statement this week. It's really long. I'm not going to read all this, but the first part of it is, Dan Snyder's awful and bad and mean and bad. But the substantive part of it is that these Democrats who are in charge of this committee, Carol Maloney and this statement's just from Carol Maloney, who's the chairwoman of the committee's investigation into the NFL's handling of the hostile workplace culture at the Washington Commanders. That's the name of the committee. So what they've done is she has apparently proposed two separate pieces of legislation.
Right.
One is called.
I'm actually going to bring those up.
Okay.
Here too.
One is called the Accountability for Workplace Misconduct Act, and the other is the Professional Images Protection Act. So the first one, what it boils down to is this committee wants to ban the use of NDAs, which is non-disclosure agreement, in the workplace when it comes to
Sexual harassment.
sexual harassment. Yes,
Right.
which is the opposite of something the government should do. I don't know who the hell thinks that's a great idea or constitutional or anything. It's horrible. And the other one is,
I would disagree. I would say
okay,
that you should not be allowed to use an NDA to cover up criminal activity, like sexual
well,
harassment.
one, sexual harassment isn't always criminal activity.
No, not
It is in
always.
some cases. And so, but this is another, and this is a state law function. It's nothing to do with the federal government. And it's just yet another piece of overreach by a overly burdensome and stupid federal government. And then the second one is something called the Professional Images Protection Act. And what it says is it's supposed to guard against employer abuse of employee images and ensure that employees have a say in how and when their images are used for business purposes. And this ties back to the cheerleader thing,
Right.
where they were, gawking over and probably masturbating over cheerleader photos.
Right.
And
basically taking videos of the cheerleaders nude
yes,
and making a softcore porn video out of it.
yes, basically so, or like a Girls Gone Wild video or something like that.
Which is, roughly the same thing.
Yeah. And so I have the same reaction to that as I did the other one. It's not a federal issue. This committee has no business doing that or any of this. But that's what has come out so far.
Well, now here's the thing, though. Like, as much as you hate it, this is what when Congress has a wide latitude to do investigations to come up with legislation. That is the only way they are able to do these types of investigations anyway. So they were always going to have to come out with something to cover their own.
Well, of course, I never said that they weren't going to come out with something. I said the whole thing is inappropriate and it shouldn't be done at all. And these two pieces of legislation aren't federal issues. I mean, this is exactly the thing that should be covered under state law. If a state government or local government believes that it is inappropriate to enter into non-disclosure agreements in the event of sexual harassment or sexual misconduct in the workplace, that is a state law function.
Well,
no, I wouldn't agree with it anyway, but that is a state law function.
See, there you and I are just going to always just.
Well, you're ultra liberal, and I'm very conservative.
It has nothing to do with liberal conservative. It has to do with should you be allowed to cover up crimes or not?
No. So what this has to do with is our view of government more than anything. That is where I think you and I disagree, which is fine. We've always been civil about it. But again, when you say criminal activity, this is not what this is about. They didn't specify that. What it specified is sexual misconduct in the workplace, which isn't always criminal activity. So now where do you draw the line for this?
Well, I would say that more often than not, almost everything that we've heard about from this team, I would classify as criminal activity when it comes to sexual misconduct.
A lot of it is criminal. Some of it would be criminal activity under the laws of the state of Maryland and Virginia.
Sure.
That's who would have the principal investigative authority under this. A lot of these things, the federal government the Justice Department can't just investigate whatever the hell it wants, even though they're doing it now, but it's really unconstitutional. They have to have it has to have a link to federal law somehow. How do you have a link to federal law? It's interstate commerce. It has, it's a federal question, and like your Joe average, like I filmed the cheerleader topless thing. Well, awful is not a federal issue. It's a state law issue. It is a state. This happened in Virginia. It's a Virginia issue.
Actually, I believe
Costa Rica or whatever.
It would be international because I think some of the video.
Well, you could link it to the state by saying they took the video. They might have taken the video in Costa Rica, but they edited and distributed it in Virginia, and so it's Virginia. It has nothing to do with federal law. That's not a Justice Department issue.
Well, you can't even if they pass this as a law, it's not like they're going to be able. I don't believe they could go back retroactively after them anyway.
Well, and the other thing is dictating what a private contract that two parties want to enter into, and Congress wants to regulate that. That's crazy. That's government insanity.
I mean, we regulate all sorts of contracts in the country.
Not like that, we don't. And there are way too many federal regulations. And if you talk about what's holding the economy back, in large part, it's that. And this is just another example.
I mean, I think the economy is being held back by inflation. Other than that, it's not.
Yeah,
too
and then
bad.
you'd say, okay, what's causing inflation? And that's another topic for another
That
podcast.
is a whole deep. Yeah, that is a whole deep
Right.
spiral. Yeah, we're not
So
going to
let's
get,
not.
and
No.
we're not going to be able to solve inflation
All
on
I
this
really
podcast.
want to do is say that this stupid committee has proposed these two bills, and we'll see. And I disagree with the bills. Alex agrees with them. The end.
Yeah, that's fine. We can just leave it there.
Yeah.
All right. It will be fun to hear what happens in 4 days on the 22nd when Goodell testifies.
Is it in 4 days?
Well, they requested them come on June 22nd. I don't know if they I didn't find if Goodell confirmed that's the date he'll be there.
So it's
That's
coming up
when,
though, is the point.
Yeah. It was a quick turnaround.
We talked about this on IJB, so you can listen to the segment on IJB. It'll be released this coming Wednesday, so I won't go into all that again. But just, I think the fundamental question that people need to watch out for is this: does Roger Goodell indirectly and subtly throw Dan Snyder under the bus? He's not going to do it directly. That's not going to happen. His job is to defend the league. And by throwing him directly into the bus, it's implicitly saying the league has been negligent in their oversight. But does he kind of hang him out to dry and subtly in so many words? If he does, I think that may be the beginning of the end for Snyder. Because if the NFL doesn't defend him and just says, hey, this is on him, I wouldn't be surprised. And then if you saw a push to get him to leave.
I would say it's going to be interesting to also hear what he says, because I'm sure they're going to ask him, why didn't you get a written report from Wilkerson and just do an oral? I'll be curious to hear like his response to that, because I think early on we all kind of assumed there would at least be a written report given to him. There
probably is a written report. It's just it's attorney work product is what it is.
Yeah, he's never seen it.
No,
probably, or at least he'll say he's never seen
I can guarantee you, the lawyer, they have written work, but it's all attorney work product, and you can't disclose attorney work.
Yeah. I mean, they interviewed 3,000 people or something ridiculous.
Yeah, it's not all in somebody's head.
Right. Yeah, even someone who's got a ridiculous brain, like memory-wise, like mine, where I remember random shit from 30 years ago, random conversations all the time. Like, yeah, you're not gonna do that with me.
Than that, that's not how this works.
No. No. All right, why don't we move on to the next topic of, oh my God, what is going on? Ron Rivera got a surprise fine late yesterday or the day before. I can't remember if it was Thursday or Friday. Rivera was fined $100,000 because the team practiced too hard and was too physical. And the team is also now going to lose 2 OTA practices for 2023. This is not the only team that got hit. Lovie Smith got hit as well in Houston. He got a $50,000 fine. And I think I saw that the Cowboys got hit too with a fine and lost one practice.
The Kansas City Chiefs maybe, but it could be wrong.
Yeah, I only remember seeing those two reported together, and then I heard on the radio someone say the Cowboys, but it could be the Chiefs.
I thought it was the Chiefs. Look, you know what I call this? Poetic justice. That's what I call it. So Ron Rivera inappropriately fined Jack Del Rio for nothing. And so I think it's only fair that Rivera gets to cough up a $100,000 fine. I'm just curious as to what he did that caused the fine. I'd like to know that. Nobody ever really said.
Well, and that's the interesting thing. So these fines are levied by the NFLPA through the NFL, right? Like, so what?
Well, not really. I mean, the NFLPA is not assessing a fine. Now,
no.
Player fines are governed by the collective bargaining agreement. Fines against coaches are not really governed by the collective bargaining agreement.
Right. But the rules about physicality during OTAs
is governed by the collective bargaining agreement. Yes.
Right. But from what I've read and heard when this happened, typically what the reason something like this comes down is a player goes to the NFLPA, says, this is what we're doing at practice that we shouldn't be doing. And then that, triggers the NFL to react.
Yes.
That's what I've heard.
Yes, so, that is what it is. Because
somebody snitched, in other words.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, if a team is violating the collective bargaining agreement's provisions with regard to conduct at minicamp, because it's very specific in that thing. that's when it gets reported, and then the NFL is fining the coach,
Right.
because of that. I was a bit surprised they fined Ron Rivera individually rather than the team.
Yeah, yeah.
But
That threw me off too. You would think that
yeah,
would be a team thing.
but again, I think it's kind of funny and well deserved. So
I mean, the other thing that I find interesting is this idea that the team loses 2 OTA practices next year. What would happen in theory if Ron Rivera suddenly were not here next year? The next coach takes that punishment? That doesn't make sense to
well,
me.
I mean, it's still the team that did it.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying. It's kind of like with college coaches leaving programs and then the program gets suspended for something the coach obviously did.
But it's
You know?
still the franchise did
Yeah.
this is the thing. I mean, because Ron Rivera is not the owner.
No.
Even if he was, the team should be punished for it. So it's not. I think this is governed. I think that part might be in the CBA, by the way.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
So I don't think it's really unfair. Now I think the CBA is a bit over the top in terms of the rules, and I think the players focused on that a lot because they don't really have anything else to focus on. They were never going to win on money, and so they have all these, kind of secondary rules like this.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I remember I was listening to Rick Snyder talk about it on one of his 2-minute things.
Uh-huh.
The amount of limitations they put on themselves in terms of tackling and stuff like that, it has hurt the game. We all know that.
Yeah.
The game is not as clean as it used to be, in part because they're not practicing those fundamentals. And football is a physical sport. You need to be tackling, all throughout practices.
I mean, so when I played high school football a million years ago, and just to reiterate, I'm not saying I was any good at it. I was just, I was another one and I was there. But in terms of like the off-season stuff, you do go less in the off-season. I mean, you don't go full contact and all that. Even at that level, we didn't do it. So there needs to be a limit, but I think you're 100% right in saying it's hurt the game. Because for one thing, these are pros, and yes, their body needs time to recover and all of that, but they also need to get in shape, in the kind of hitting shape for this.
Right.
And when you don't hit it all, I don't know what the point of preseason games anymore are if none of these teams are going to play their starters more than 5 minutes.
Right.
I don't get it. And so when they just sort of turn the beginning of the season into preseason, I don't think that's good for the game or the league as a whole. And I think that's what you're saying.
That's part of what I'm saying. But I'm also saying, even if, like, you've been a lawyer for how long now?
Long time.
Yeah. You still have to practice some fundamentals. Like, no matter how.
Well, I mean, every state makes you do what's called continuing legal education for this reason. You have to do it in Texas. It's 15 hours a year, where you have to go sit and listen to someone talk, or you can do some of it self-study and things. But that's like
lectures, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like what you're talking about is they need to do football CLE.
Keep on practicing fundamentals, no matter your profession. Like I'm right now editing a video just for fun, just for myself, just to keep my skills fresh.
I would say the title of this show ought to be Football CLE, but nobody would understand that, but about the 2 lawyers that you listen to the show.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that's my point with the whole, like, they gotta let up on some of that stuff, in my opinion. Just let these players practice tackling and don't freak out about it. Have them hit dummies for, I don't know, 2 hours a week or something.
It kind of makes me wonder that whatever came to their attention was it Jeremy Reeves hit somebody and got the last week?
There were apparently 2 hits. That was one, Jeremy Reeves hitting Diami Brown, and the other one was a bunch of like 3rd-tier players. I don't remember who.
Oh, okay, because I didn't see any of it. I'm just relying on you to tell me. No. And that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, but 2 hard hits like that were
accidents. But if it made the news though.
Yeah, I get
it caught
that.
the NFL's attention.
Sure.
So much of this stuff, like crimes and there's a lot of criminal activity and bad things going, but it has to catch somebody's attention.
Right. If no one sees you commit a crime, it's not a crime mentality.
Yeah, I know. I mean, if you chop a tree down in the woods, or if you hear a noise in the woods, did the noise actually happen?
Right.
I said that badly, but you get the point.
We all know the metaphor.
Yeah.
If a tree falls in the woods and no one's around to hear
There
it.
you go. Thank you.
Yeah.
You know, everybody knows I love my metaphors.
Right. That's a classic metaphor too.
Yes.
Or is that a philosophical thing? I don't really even know.
It's kind of a combination of both. Well, and
Yeah.
the scientific argument to that is, yes, the noise happened because
Right.
noise is dependent on so many here. Noise is just a disturbance of the air, basically. And so,
Right.
from a scientific standpoint, yes, the noise happened. And Alex is laughing at me.
No. I'm not laughing. I'm just suddenly remembering when again Simpsons reference. What is the sound of one hand clapping? Well, no, Bart, you don't get it. No, Lisa, listen. He's like clapping.
See, that
this
goes
is a
to show
3,000-year-old riddle. You don't just answer it.
the difference in Alex's mentality versus mine. I go into the intellectual,
right,
scientific analysis of this, and
my
Alex
brain just went to
references
the
Simpsons.
Yes,
Which
that
also
pretty much sums up the whole show. All right,
kind of, yeah.
Okay, last topic, and I think we're gonna have to focus a little bit on this guy.
Yes.
Terry McLaurin sat out minicamp, went back to Florida, which, and I guess continued to work out on his own down there. But he's holding out. Sounds like the team and his agent are pretty far apart right now on a new contract, from what they've said. I saw numbers that said the team was offering like $18 million per year, and his agent was asking for 26, which is ridiculous. That would make him the highest paid receiver in the league, I believe, at that point.
Well,
or among
Adams
them
at 28, but yeah, among them certainly.
Yeah. So they're far apart. Obviously, Rivera said something along the lines of, "Look, we're going to meet in the middle at some point. It's just we're not there yet."
Well, first of all, for the sake of Terry McLaurin, I hope he escapes, because I think Terry McLaurin deserves to be on a better team. He's appears to be an outstanding person. Although you never really know these guys unless you know them, but he appears to be a solid citizen.
Right. Yeah.
As talented as anyone in the league, and his stats and his visibility have been hurt by the fact that he's been in this moribund franchise.
Despite that, he's also put up ridiculously good numbers.
Even with like 52 different quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And so the fact that he's been in Washington has hurt his career directly.
Sure.
But that having been said, if you want to talk about 26 is where his agent said?
That was the number I heard, yeah.
Okay. So Devontae Adams,
Stephon Diggs, I believe, is up there.
Tyreek Hill's at 30. Stephon Diggs is at 24. A.J. Brown's at 25. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But Terry McLaurin has not produced at that level. Devontae Adams is a 5-time Pro Bowler, 2-time first-team All-Pro. Tyreek Hill is a 2-time All-Pro, 6-time Pro Bowler. Terry McLaurin has a no-time Pro Bowler and a no-time All-Pro. So I love him. Again, I think on any team, and Alex and I were kicking around like what my new team ought to be. So if anybody has any recommendations for me, I'm willing to listen as to what my new favorite team in the NFL will be. Just tweet us or email us or something. But anyway, I mean, for whatever reason, McLaurin just hadn't done that. And I frankly think that 18 is probably where the number ought to be, something along those lines.
I could see it being up at 20. It seems like there's a lot of guys in the 20 area now who I would say are more on par with McLaurin. But you mentioned three names.
Cooper Kupp's another one, 26 million.
Yeah. Okay, so Adams, Hill, Kupp, Diggs. You know what they are? That
A.J. Brown, too.
Oh, Brown is the only one I don't necessarily put in the same category as those guys. Those guys dictate everything about the offense. Terry McLaurin's a great receiver. Don't get me wrong, but he's not like a Deshawn Jackson or Stephon Diggs who takes the top off all the time. He's not just a matchup nightmare like Hill or Adams. What Terry McLaurin is good at is he's probably one of the best route runners in the league, and he's got a great catch radius.
He's got great hands.
He's got great hands, but you don't fear him like you would those other guys, because those other guys, I don't think there's a corner who can cover them, and there are corners who can cover Terry.
As we've proven,
this
past year, he got shut down a couple times by
Right.
the guy from the Eagles. Who was that did it?
Oh,
And
I'd have to go back and look.
yeah,
But
but
yeah,
anyway, there was a couple times that I remember saying on this show that, I mean, Terry McLaurin got flat out beat.
yeah, yeah, and he's a very good receiver. He's a number one on almost any team that you put him on. Unless you had one of those guys, they're clearly your number one.
He's not, and he's again, from a raw talent standpoint, he's up there. But is he amongst the elite? No.
No, he is probably a borderline Pro Bowler.
I think he's one of the best route runners in the NFL.
Oh yeah. That like I said, I think his route running and hands are probably elite in the NFL.
But you're right, and part of it certainly is, the Washington's quarterbacking has been lousy for years, no doubt about that. But I mean, again, watch him get shut down, and the Devontae Adams of the world may not produce 120 yards every game, but they're dangerous.
Right.
Like you said,
they just get open. That's all they do. Yeah. If you don't have that ability, I don't know if you ever make it to that true elite of the elite status. To just be a matchup nightmare. Yeah.
No, you don't. I mean, and there's different ways to do it, and you can be big and all of that.
Oh yeah.
So Alex, what do the fans think? You're on Twitter. I'm not on Twitter anymore.
Clearly the fans just want Terry signed at all costs. I think that shouldn't surprise anybody. That most fans, they would probably give him the 26 that he wants at this point. Just because I think there's a lot of fans who are desperate for this face of the franchise kind of offensive player. Somebody who, I hate to boil it down to this. This is the guy whose jersey you're going to buy. You might be into buying a Chase Young, but people want an offensive player's jersey. They don't want a defensive player's jersey.
When you want to buy a jersey from a player who's going to be with the team that you're a fan of.
And that's the other thing.
And Washington's kind of famous for letting players go.
Right. Could you imagine? All right, so they've done this rebrand. This is the jersey that's probably their best-selling jersey right now is Terry, I would guess.
I would assume.
Could you imagine if they traded him before the start of the season at this point? What all those fans would do who spent that money?
That would be upset. I mean, it's your favorite player and your favorite team. I mean, I understand that.
Yeah.
So the question really... Now, first of all, I guess let's talk about salary cap, because I'm still tracking the salary cap and all that. I mean, I'm still part of the show.
Right.
And so a contract, this year doesn't have to change this year, okay? And as a matter of fact, it's a rookie on his rookie year deal, so it's not going to change this year. Now, Washington next year, 2023 cap hit. So they've got 193 million on the books, and that's with all 90 players on the roster. Here, let's see. So savings. Yeah, okay. So I didn't have the rule of 51 on my chart for next year yet. So anyway, they do have cap space, is my point, because right now, the salary cap this year's 208 million, and then with the rollover and stuff, the Redskins are up at 214, and they have 18 million
this year.
Right now. Now, the last time I checked, which was last weekend, Fedarian Mathis and Butler, neither one of them were signed. And so you take off a couple, that might have happened this week. I haven't looked it up yet. So take off a couple million. So they're at realistically like 16. I have it at 16.295 million. So call it 17. Mm-hmm. And so you could do this. And next year they're only at 193 million, and that's with all 90 players. And so they have enough cap space to where they could do this. And I could design a contract where you limit the year one salary cap and push the rest of it down. So it's not a matter of them not being able to do this. It's a matter of somebody in the Redskins front office being smart and saying, this player is not worth 26 million, no matter what he thinks. I think that I ought to be able to date Brooklyn Decker, but yet I am not worth that to her,
Right. I mean, here's the thing. And pushing back the cap hit, most players I think usually are okay with that too, because that just means they have more long-term security.
Well, no, not always, because
Not
a lot
always.
of times it's the kind of fake contract numbers. Like, for example, I took and by the way, do you like my model, a 90s model out of thin air, Brooklyn
Yeah,
Decker?
I mean,
I don't know where that came from.
I don't know what she's doing these days.
I have no
but
idea. That
yeah,
just name popped in my head for no reason at all.
yeah,
So if you look at like a guy like Devontae Adams, so Devontae, 5 years, 140 million. The $28 million average annual value is a number that agents like more than it is something that's actually relevant. Agents, the reason why it's pushed is the agents like to say, look at what I got for my client. I can do that for you.
right,
What the deal actually is $19.25 million signing bonus, which means it's paid up front, or it may be a deferred signing bonus, but it's going to come no matter what. And then of that, then another $3 million is guaranteed at signing, meaning the base salary for the year one. And then the rest of it is just coming in rolling guarantees. He's got another 42 million guaranteed in March. But right now, I mean, they could cut him. This year, his dead cap's 22 million. They could cut him next year before that happens. They could
right.
get rid of him in a year.
Well, I
None
mean,
of
but
this is guaranteed.
we all know like that is kind of how the NFL works too. These contracts.
That's what
are
I'm
never
saying.
guaranteed.
It's
Yeah,
not, a lot of times these deals have money pushed that is never going to happen.
sure.
At the odds of Devontae Adams getting 40 million a year in 2026 are probably not good.
Right. And I mean, the other part about it, of course, is there's incentives and things like that always baked to make the number look bigger by
He's
the
got,
agent.
just as an example, he's got a $29,000 active per game active bonus, which comes out to another $500,000. He's got 250,000 as a Pro Bowl bonus. But most of it is for him, for Devontae, is next year a whole bunch of money guarantees.
Right,
But they can get out of it by cutting him before it happens. Will he do that? Probably not, but that's not the point.
No.
And then eventually his dead cap's going to be lower than his cap hit, which means they could cut him no matter what.
Right. And I think even the layman understands that number, the dead cap versus cap hit, like you can look at any contract and figure out when a guy's going to probably have to get restructured or cut.
There's really only two contracts in the NFL that aren't like this. One of them is Kirk Cousins, and the other one is Patrick Mahomes.
And Deshawn Watson, because didn't he just get a ridiculous contract like that?
I haven't looked at his. If you give me 1 second, I'll look it up. But
because I thought I heard that he got a whole bunch of money guaranteed. Yeah.
Like Patrick Mahomes has these rolling guarantees, but they're happening 2 and 3 years out, and so it becomes very hard for the team to cut him because they have to think 2 and 3 years ahead of time.
Right.
So he'd have to really suck, and then they'd have to make a determination that he's going to suck and always going to suck, and then get rid of him, and that's very unlikely. Okay, so Deshaun Watson, holy cow, this is a stupid contract. 5 years, $230 million for a guy who shouldn't even be playing. $44.96 million signing, so $45 million signing bonus. The full $230 million is guaranteed. Average annual salary of $46 million. So it's signing bonus plus every base salary through the end of the contract. So he's truly has 100% guaranteed contract. Now, these contracts have call it the Michael Vick clause. I'm making that name, but
it's a poison pill clause, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so like when the Falcons got rid of Michael Vick and recouped some of the salary, it's because in essence you did a bad thing that was bad and mean and bad, and you embarrassed the team, and
Conduct
so we can claw back.
Yeah,
Conduct detrimental is the legal buzzword. So we can claw this money back. So my guess is that Watson's contract has something like that, probably more onerous. So I don't think it's fair to say that if Deshaun Watson goes to prison, which he probably isn't at this point.
No. He's probably getting suspended, but not going to prison.
Yeah. So the suspended part of it is not going to be charged probably against the Browns would be my guess.
Yeah. But
that's one. Deshaun Watson's contract's pretty awful. Yes.
Yeah. And to the point where they've said other owners are actually just mad about that contract.
Well, yeah, I would be too. And I think the Browns are freaking idiots, and not just for doing this, not just because it's Watson. They're stupid for that too. But this is not a precedent that the owners need to set. They need
No.
to stop giving these guaranteed contracts out, and the owners need to put their foot down and just say, we're not doing it. Go pound sand.
They're letting the quarterbacks get out of control.
This is what happened with the NBA.
Yeah.
And I quit the NBA for political reasons because I don't like what they stand for anymore. But beyond that, the NBA really let the players take control of the league. You ever heard people say the NBA is a players' league? Well, the reason is the owners let them do it. People need to remember who is the owner and who is the employee, who is putting themselves at financial risk. It's not the players, it's the owners. And if it were me, I would be very firm in not giving fully guaranteed contracts.
I think it's too late for the NBA change that. It's going to be tough for the NFL to ever roll this back, though, with the quarterback.
It's their own fault.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's their own fault. They've let that get way out of control with quarterbacks. It's
especially for some of the quarterbacks. I mean, think about this. Patrick Mahomes, first of all, isn't fully guaranteed, but in effect, in a certain way, it kind of is. He's worth it. He won a Super Bowl, but Deshaun Watson, granted, I mean, absent his problems, just purely from an on-field standpoint, certainly a great,
he's talented, sure.
One of the franchise quarterbacks, and I would take him on whatever my team ends up being from an on-the-field standpoint.
If he wasn't,
from an on-the-field standpoint, not if he's not a sexual harasser like he is. And don't sue me. Well, no, go ahead and sue me because you can take my 2 cents if you want. You're a sexual harasser.
Yeah.
You've committed sexual misconduct. Anyway, but Kirk Cousins isn't worth a fully guaranteed contract.
He is a career 500 quarterback.
Yeah.
He puts up big numbers, but
he does it in garbage time, and he doesn't seem to be. He seems to be a nice guy, kind of a weird guy, but
he's
pleasant.
the Western Kentucky quarterback. Remember how we were joking about that a while back? How Western Kentucky always puts up these crazy QB numbers,
but he never wins, and he doesn't seem like inspires his team very much. Like people that have laid down and died for like Dan Marino and John Elway and pick your quarterback. But Kirk Cousins doesn't seem to inspire that in people.
Right. Yeah, it is weird. I mean, look, average quarterbacks get $25 million, like slightly above average. You're at 35 now. It's insane where the NFL is with quarterbacks.
It's getting to be these are baseball contract numbers.
Yeah,
$230 million. That's baseball.
Well, and what they are is their star pitcher numbers. Is like that's kind of the scale you're seeing. Whereas baseball, you have a few superstar offensive players, but
Clayton Kershaw isn't making $46 million a year.
No.
He's making like 30.
Who is Scherzer? Probably is making in the mid 40s. I know. I know a couple of guys are, but it's not many.
I can tell you in 1 second.
I know Scherzer is because I remember when he signed his contract alone was higher than the lowest payroll in a baseball team.
Okay, so Kershaw isn't a good example. I mean, he's certainly the most accomplished active pitcher in the league. I mean, in terms of resume and what he's done and what he means to baseball, he's number one.
In terms of pitching, yeah.
Pitching. He's at $17 million. He's given the Dodgers a break. I mean, and that was kind of a thing. So Max Scherzer isn't giving.
So he's pulling a Tom Brady, is what you're telling me.
Yes, he is. He is pulling a Tom Brady. So Max Scherzer is doing that for no one. And so let's look at him.
Right.
3 years, $130 million.
Yeah.
Base salary, $43 million.
Yep.
So there you go.
Yeah.
So in other words, Watson's contract is bigger.
Yep.
And it's only 3 years, Scherzer's contract.
Well, Scherzer's also going to be.
He's 100. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, he's 38, I think.
Who was the hitter who left Washington for Philadelphia?
Bryce Harper. He signed 310, 330, something around there.
Check his contract.
I'm pretty sure it's 330 million is what he signed.
Something like it's in that ballpark.
For 12 years, if I remember correctly.
Let me see here. Okay, yeah, Bryce Harper, 3 years, $330 million. His salary is $11 million this year. It jumps up to $28 million in 2021.
That's a low salary for him this year, honestly.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
but that's what it is. And so, point we're making here is that what's his name, Mr. Harasser, Mr. Misconduct, is outgaining all of them. That's the point. Out-earning all of them.
Which is kind of nuts. And
I've decided I don't want you to sue me, so I will say you're an alleged purveyor of sexual misconduct.
Right. I'm just going to say weirdo. weirdo pervert.
He's definitely
Probably.
a weirdo pervert, and that I'll stand
Probably.
by.
Yes.
Not probably.
Well,
No. His lawyer has admitted that he contracted with 40. What did I say the number was?
44.
40, something like that.
Yeah.
Masseuses, of which only a handful were real masseuses.
Right.
Over the course of a year.
Yeah.
This is for a man who can get all the massages he wants in the training room.
For free.
That is, no matter if the allegations are true or not true in terms of his sexual misconduct and in some cases sexual assault, that is freaking weird, and you're a pervert.
Yeah. Yeah. He yes. We'll just say yes.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So back to Terry McLaurin. Do they get a deal done? I don't know. Probably, I think, in the end. But I don't know what that number ends up. I don't know what the right number is for him.
Here's what I would say. If I were a fan of the team, I would not want to be tortured for the next 2 years by this round of franchise tag and after franchise tag and franchise
you definitely
tag.
don't want that.
I would be rooting for the team to either sign him this year or trade him, because I just think the fans have been through this too many times with Cousins, with Brandon Scherf,
right?
And it never works out.
You can even throw the ending of the Trent Williams saga here as like just
the same kind of thing.
Yeah,
because that whole tumor thing certainly bad, but it was more about he just wanted to get out. At the time, I blamed him.
It was a pissing contest between the player and the front office.
At the time, I blamed him, but now I applaud him.
Yeah, I always kind of realized what was going on there.
Yeah. Oh, we talked about it at the time on the show.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I just think the fan base has been through this too many times, and
mm-hmm.
And these guys don't want to be in a horrible, atrocious franchise either. They want to be somewhere where it's solid foundation. There's a chance at winning. The owner isn't a weirdo and a creep. I mean,
I would say if they can't get a deal done, I'm with you. Trade them sometime this season. Get what you can for him. And by the way, do the same with Daron Payne. Like, if you're not going to sign him long term,
trade him.
Get assets back.
Well, I think the other thing for Terry, by the way, is his friend is not here anymore, and he passed away. But it didn't work out with Haskins here. And I think if it had, it might have been different.
But his college roommate is here now in Curtis Samuel, which is,
yeah, but Samuel isn't necessarily here for the long term.
No. I mean, Samuel's never healthy enough to be here for the long term. Yeah.
I mean, for those of you wondering about Curtis Samuel, he's got dead years at the end of his contract.
Yeah.
So his real contract is really through next year.
Right.
Yeah. And he's 2024 are void years. I said dead. I meant void years. So he's really only got one more year here. So if he doesn't produce now, they're going to cut him.
Exactly. Sure. Wouldn't surprise me.
No.
All right, we got a couple minutes left. We got to talk about the cornerback depth chart, just kind of run through who's there.
Yep.
We were talking about it earlier, pre-show, you and I. Not a lot of changes. Honestly, you could have basically taken whatever we said about the cornerbacks last year and reproduced it this year, and it would basically be the same thing, because I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys out of the 8 on the cornerback depth chart who were definitely here last year. And the other 2, or I guess there's 3 guys who are rookies coming in. And that's about it.
The other thing we could have done is called this the DB position group breakdown, but we needed another 2 segments instead of 1. So we're going to break it up.
Right. So we split corners and safeties.
Because a lot of them can do both.
Right. Oh, and I miscounted because I have I looked at the team's depth chart, and they still count Bobby McCain as a cornerback on their depth chart on their website for some stupid reason.
Yeah.
So it's 5. It's 5 guys are, here from last year.
Who should we start with?
Why don't we start at the top with Mr. William Jackson III? He came over last year. He's the big money guy, supposed to be the number 1 corner, right? But struggled a lot last year. Let's be honest.
He wasn't up to Darrell Green level in any way.
No, he wasn't terrible. There were some clear issues with him communicating with the safeties early on, right? If you remember last season, you and I think disagreed at times, but a lot of those blown coverages on big plays were on his side.
I thought some of that was on McCain.
Right.
The plays you're talking about. Not Jackson, but Jackson was not innocent. And this is also, I mean, Jackson is a man corner,
Right.
and they don't play a ton of man, and this is another case of a team sort of misusing people a bit. But all the same, when you have
Right.
a $40 million contract and you were brought in here to be the number one guy,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't care what your history is, you need to produce. And he
Yes.
really didn't. I thought he was
No.
okay. If he was making a reasonable salary, he would have been fine. But
Right. Right. He just kind of let us all down there as a number one guy. If you were your number two, I would say his numbers were, right on par with the number two corner.
I just
Uh,
don't really trust him enough to lock down Devontae Adams on a regular,
yeah.
those type of guys on a regular basis.
No, I would not trust him with that. I mean, he's going to need help over the top on those kind of things. He's not a
Yes.
guy that I want to leave out on an island, generally speaking.
No, but he is better at that. That
Yeah,
is
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
what he's known for. But still, I mean, I don't think he really impressed as compared to expectations.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. And just to go over, last year he played in just 12 games actually. He missed a lot of time and had 2 interceptions in those 12 games, 8 passes defended. Um, I didn't think to go through and pull everybody's like stats. You know how like there's those advanced sites that say here's what, the quarterback rating against this guy was. I didn't think to go
Yeah,
hunt
I don't
that
like
down.
a lot of those stats against corners because a lot of them are subjective. The quarterback rating one
Hmm.
isn't, but it also is not totally dependent on them.
Oh yeah.
I don't think it's 100% fair thing.
And it's also a little bit best guess, you know,
Yes.
because we don't know what their duty was in coverage every time. Uh, I mean, you got to hope Jackson plays better this year. Another year in the system, maybe he understands it better. That's kind of what the team's obviously banking on with him. They didn't get rid of him. Um, all right, why don't we move on to the next guy, Kendall Fuller. One of my favorite players back when he was the third corner with this team. What was that, 5 years ago? And he was playing in the slot and
The
just
first time,
crushing it.
round one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yes, his first go around here before he went to Kansas City, won a Super Bowl, and came back. Um, they keep him as this number two corner, which is fine because I guess he's not as strong in the slot anymore as he used to be. I don't know if that's an
There's
age
a better
thing,
reason why they keep him in that role. You want to know what it is?
necessity.
No, he's making $40 million a year.
Well, not a year.
I'm sorry, he's got a total contract value of $40 million.
Right, right, right. I think it's 10 million a year, right? Roughly, something like
Uh,
that.
yeah. So this year his cap hit is 11.125
Yeah.
million.
Okay. So
Next year
close.
he's at the same thing, 11.65 million. But the only two guys that have
Big
non-minimum
contract.
contracts are
Yeah.
those two guys. So they're gonna play. I've said this since the day we started this show. It's the guys with the big money are gonna play
Right.
always. Now I hear you. I thought Kendall Fuller back then was a talent, but
Hmm.
I'm also seeing now why Kansas City got rid of him.
Yeah.
And why Kansas City was willing to let him go, more accurately stated. Um, I think he's probably a slot corner, his true destiny, but he's making too much money to do it. And Washington doesn't
Hmm.
really have anybody who's ready. I mean, you'd think that maybe Benjamin St. Juste might be able to step into it, but we didn't
Yeah.
see. He got burnt sometimes last year too. They picked on him. So I think if they find somebody, they may kick Kendall to the inside or kick him out.
Yeah. Yeah. Last year, I think, or so far this year, they're saying that Benjamin St. Juste is mostly going to be the slot guy. And why don't we talk about him a little? I liked what we saw from him more often than not. I think a lot of people have been pretty critical about Benjamin St. Juste. For a third round rookie, I thought he played pretty well when he was healthy.
Uh,
Um, like I don't really have any complaints about what we saw. I know he missed about half the season last year, though.
Yeah, and
That's
there are some offenses again that picked on him a little bit.
sure.
I like St. Juice as a player. I'm a I'm not sure he's a true slot corner.
No,
He's a
no,
little
he's
bit too
he's
big
six
for
three.
that.
He's a big
Yeah,
guy.
and so he's
Yeah.
not gonna be able to match up well with like some Tariq Hill type burner types.
Right.
Um, but on the other hand, if you have to have a corner cover tight end out of that, the what is that, the Y position,
Hmm.
maybe he's your guy. I just think someday St. Juice is going to be the number 2 corner on this team.
I do too. And I like. So here's my thing: when you have a guy his size, 6'3", 200 pounds, or at least that's what he's listed as, the team is saying they want to use him kind of like a Buffalo nickel, how they used Landon Collins last year, just because of the size, I'm guessing. I would just, and I've always said this, figure out who the biggest guy on the other side is and just match your big guy against their big guy to take away that jump ball advantage as often as you can. That's what I would be doing with St. Juice.
It's a theory. Yeah, I mean, it's a theory. Because, I mean, would you want a like Darryl Green matched up, but he was a Hall of Famer.
Right. Do you want 5'11" Kendall Fuller on a 6'5" guy or 6'3" Benjamin St. Juice?
No. Yeah.
It's a very
I'll take
simple
the latter,
theory.
Please.
Yeah.
Not the former.
Right. Yeah. It's a very simple theory, I know, and football doesn't always work that way, but
no, it's not that simple. But as a general basic proposition,
right.
Yeah, you don't want to line up a slot corner on, who's the guy up in Seattle who's gigantic, the receiver.
Oh, why am I Hollywood? Is that who you?
No, not him. The other one.
Oh, I'm blanking. I know who you're talking about, and I can't remember his name. Also.
Oh God! See, now you're gonna make me. It's gonna bother me, and now I'm gonna have to say it and look it up here, and so I'm gonna vamp until I can.
Well, you do that. I would say the inverse of it is also true of that theory. I don't necessarily think putting a big guy like Benjamin St. Juice on your smallest burner slot receiver.
No, that's what I'm saying. That's why I'm not sure he's a great slot corner. And I was talking about DK Metcalf.
That's who you. Yeah.
Would you really want Kendall Fuller on DK Metcalf? Would that really go well?
No.
Now,
but I don't know who goes well on DK Metcalf.
Well, no, I mean he's an elite talent. But point is, your point to say that.
Yeah.
Would I rather have Benjamin St. Juice on him? Probably, yeah.
Right.
If you had to put one-on-one at least.
Right, and when we talked about how Kendall Fuller was good in the slot before, he was good against those quick twitch guys. That was what his strength was in the slot, was put him against the small guy, and
I feel
like you take those two. You have some good matchup options like that.
Yeah, I just don't think Kendall Fuller is quite as good as Redskins fans thought he was in the beginning. I mean, don't forget that the Chiefs had to move into safety.
Yeah,
at one point in time because they just didn't trust him as any corner. And yes, that's a much better team and all of that. But regardless, if he was a true talent, he would be still there playing corner for him.
Right. Yeah, you're right about that. All right, so that's the big three, and I think it's safe to say those
only three.
Well, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Those three are going to be your starting three corners, and this team's going to play a lot of nickel this year. I think that's safe to assume as well. So I think we'll see all three of those guys on the field a lot.
Mainly because they have two linebackers.
Yes, because they only have two linebackers and maybe only one good one. We don't know.
Yes. I don't know if they even have one good one.
Yeah, maybe one average one.
Yes.
Yeah. So those three are going to be on the field a lot. Let's talk about their backups.
Okay.
Danny Johnson, still here somehow. Feels like Danny Johnson's been here forever, but he's only in his 5th season, which he was, I believe, a 7th-round pick. So, he's made a decent little career for himself overall.
There's no small amount of irony that Danny Johnson is one of the most vested veterans on the Washington team.
Is he really at this point?
And he was an undrafted free agent. He's been here since 2018.
Undrafted. Wow.
So if you want to know, I'll flip through this real fast. So Jonathan Allen, 2017.
Right. Danny Johnson,
Danny Johnson, 2018. Troy
Yeah.
Apke, 2018. Jeremy Reeves, 2018.
Okay.
Chase Rouillet, 2017.
Yeah.
And
that's about it.
Well, Tress Way is going to be the number. Yeah, Tress Way, 2016.
Now.
So that's it. Tress Way is your veteran leader, Jonathan Allen and Chase Rouillet, and then you got Danny and a couple others.
By the way, I've secretly made a decision for myself that if I ever do cave and buy a new jersey, it's going to be a Tress Way jersey. I got to stick with the bit.
He was a super nice guy. Remember, we had him on the show. He was great.
Yeah, he's a nice guy. He's probably their best player for the last decade.
Did you ever figure out who your wife was in a photo with?
No, I'm convinced it's just some insurance salesman who claimed he was with the team.
Are you sure it's not Cameron Cheeseman?
No, because he's too short. My wife is almost the same height as me. She's like 5'10".
Oh, okay.
So,
what we're talking about here is Alex's wife. Alex put a photo of his wife at some DC
It was
event.
the Pride Festival in DC. Yeah.
And there was a player, purportedly a player, who's in the photo who we weren't
Right.
100% sure of who he was.
But he looks probably to be in his mid-30s, white dude, and it's not Tressway. I like that was my first instinct. I was like, could it be? No, it's not Tress.
My thought was Cameron Cheeseman.
But he looks too old to be Cameron Cheeseman, doesn't he?
Let me look up a photo of Cameron Cheeseman.
It could be Dax Mclaren, who, if maybe
Dax
he
Millen
just was in the sun too much.
Maybe so. Okay. So sorry, I had to let it. I refused to type.
No, it's fine. So it was very funny though. My wife was there with her friends, and yeah, so the team had like cheerleaders and a player supposed to be out.
Okay, so Cameron Cheeseman.
Yeah, I think it's Dax Millen if it's anybody, because she said he looked like he was about 6 foot, 6'1".
Let's look at Dax Millen's photo here.
Yeah, Dax Millen looks closer to.
It's Millen, right?
Yeah, whatever.
See, the photo of Dax Millen on the Washington website is he's got long, crazy hair.
Yeah, exactly.
So maybe if he got a haircut, I don't know, man. I don't think it looks a whole lot like him.
It doesn't look a lot like anybody. I literally went through every player's photo, and I couldn't find a single one to be like.
Do you think it'd just be a guy that the team just hired to go out there and pretend like he's a player?
I don't think a lot of people at the Pride Festival know any of the players on the current team.
See, I can tell you this much. Back when I was drafting contracts for a football team, some of these sponsorship agreements, there'll be an agreement wherein the team agrees to send players out for a certain number of times for a certain number of promotional events. And if it's a big enough sponsor, it'll use the words premium players only. Right. So that keeps them from sending Dax Millen and Cameron Cheeseman out. Right. And that will require like the Kendall Fullers of the world. But something like this DC, is that like a gay rights thing? Is that what right? Okay. So that's not really organized by anybody in the team. They're not a sponsor. And so they're just going to take what they can get. And that's when you end up with the Cameron Cheesemans of the world. Yes.
Or what might very well be just somebody from the sales office.
Or some random tall guy from the sales office. That's right.
Hey, you look like you've worked out once. Why don't we have you?
Definitely wasn't an offensive lineman because the guy was skinny.
No.
And it wasn't Tressway because we know him.
Right. It's not who's the kicker that we had with the crazy beard? Like even if he shaved his beard, it wouldn't look like him.
Joey Sly's got a crazy beard.
Yeah, that's who I was thinking.
Yeah, that's not Joey Sly.
Right.
And he's pretty.
I just thought it was very funny.
Dude.
She's like, I met this guy. He says he's on the team. I'm like, I don't think he's on the team.
Joey Sly is listed at 5'11". So if your wife is almost 5'10", that wasn't Joey Sly anyway.
No. The guy's got to be 2-3 inches taller than her. So
there's a limit to thinly built white guys on this team.
There
ain't a lot of them. It was because the other white guys are mostly offensive linemen.
Right. But the other thing I will say, and I texted you guys after she told me, one of the cheerleaders apparently listens to the show. She didn't remember the name, but the cheerleader, I guess she was talking to her, and she's like, my husband does this podcast, the Hog Side. She's like, oh, is it Steve or is it Alex? Yeah.
Hey, that's a good news.
Yes. So
glad
at
some
least one
woman
cheerleader
somewhere is listening. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm going with Cheeseman. After flipping through all the photos.
All right, you can say Cheeseman. That's fine.
I'm just going to say that the team probably has him listed as an inch taller than he really is.
Okay. We could see that.
And I did think that photo, that person was 2 or 3 or 4 inches taller than your wife was.
Okay. Sure. I mean,
she might have had a different perception live, but just in the photo, it looked like that. So I'm going with Cheeseman.
If they sent the long snapper, that's not the worst person to send.
It's either Cheeseman or Percy Butler.
Percy Butler? I didn't even think to look at Percy.
The African American rookie corner. I was joking.
Oh, okay. Hey, there could be a white guy named Percy Butler.
Well, I'm not. There could be, but it's not this Percy Butler because he is black.
Yes, I had more than one moment where I was like, "Was it this guy?" And I would say a name, and she'd be like, "Who?" And I'm like, "No, it's that guy's African American."
It's got to be Cameron Cheeseman. It has to be.
Okay.
And so when you're getting the long snapper, that tells you that is not a sponsor of the team. That's what it tells you.
No, I wouldn't be surprised.
Premium players only does not include the second-year rook snapper. Long snapper.
No. It was just very funny that she sent me, and it hurt my pride a little. Be my pride as a fan to be, I don't know who this is. If you're telling me this is a player, I'm not really sure it's a
You've
player.
probably never seen a photo of Cameron Cheeseman.
I might have we talked about long snappers at one point when he was drafted.
Okay, you're gonna make me pull this out. Oh, so can I find this on your Twitter feed?
It's gonna be buried in my Twitter feed.
I'm gonna have to.
Yeah.
I'm gonna. But you put it on Hogstie's feed too, right?
I retweeted it. Yes.
But we haven't tweeted very much since you haven't been doing it and I haven't been doing it.
No.
So let me pull up. I'm still logged in on my laptop computer here.
Okay.
And we'll go to media.
Mm-hmm. Well, while you're looking, I'm just going to run through the names of the other people.
Okay.
Just to get it out of the way. All right. Danny Johnson, he's going to be probably here as the fourth corner. He's also likely going to be on special teams because he does kick return duties. We still have Corn Elder here, which is still my favorite name on this entire roster. We have a Corn Elder and a Cameron Cheeseman, like two food names. Love that.
Corn and cheese.
Yes, corn and cheese.
You need to have like a pizza and burgers or something come along.
Yeah. Well, Steve, with your new heart healthy diets that you got to be on, corn is probably okay.
I have to
not okay.
I have to gain pleasure from other people gaining pleasure.
You're not making like your kids.
I'm looking at this photo now of Cameron the photo Cheeseman? Of your wife.
Okay.
Now this guy is definitely 3 or 4 inches taller than her.
Okay. She was also probably a little drunk when she estimated.
Okay. Yeah, because her top of her head is at about his eyes. So this guy, how tall is she? 5'10"?
5'10"-ish. Yeah.
Okay, so this guy's like 6'4". So 6'3", 6'4", and I mean he's got the same hair as Cheeseman. The face looks a little more mature, but also this picture's probably a year and a half old now. That's on the
his
website.
Rookie photo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's.
You're thinking it's Cheeseman?
90% Cheeseman. Yeah.
Okay. Unfortunately, we don't have a way to just go ask Cameron Cheeseman if he went to the Pride Festival or something.
I mean, if we interview him in training camp, we might.
I'll ask him. Yeah. Yes. If we can get into training camp.
We haven't filed the things yet.
Yeah.
Mainly because I haven't been motivated to do it.
No, I get it. All right, so Corn Elder, Christian Holmes, and Josh Drayden, and Nigel Hill are the three new guys, right? Those are the three rookies. And let's be honest, I think they're all undrafted free agents, all three of those rookies. So I don't think it's very...
No. Christian Holmes is a 7th-round pick.
Oh, that's right. We did draft him in the 7th round.
Yeah.
So he'll probably make the roster. Just, he'll be on that contract.
Probably. At a minimum, he'd probably at least make the practice squad, I would think.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, so I think the first 4 are pretty well set, with Danny Johnson being the 4th. I don't know about any of these other guys necessarily making it or not. You feel like they're going to have to keep, 5 corners minimum?
Well, I think 6 probably. I mean, although it depends on how these safeties, if somebody can, one of these safeties can show they can play 2 roles. Yeah. But I think just looking at the safety group, we're going to do next week, I think it's more likely that some of these corners can play safety than vice versa. So I tend to think that they might keep 6 corners just because they know they're going to play a lot of nickel. And so you got to have an extra. So I tend to think you're going to have 6. And so since we have to predict, obviously Jackson, Fuller, St. Juice, Danny Johnson, I have to think those 4 are in. And then Christian Holmes, probably I'm going to go with him for now, even though we've never seen him. And then of these other guys, I mean, I guess Corn Elder has a leg up because they know him already. Yeah. So I'll go with him by default.
I mean, I'm quickly looking at the safeties on this roster, not to get ahead of ourselves there, but it's not like we have a ton of safeties on the depth chart either.
And none of these are really corner types either.
No. But
McCain maybe.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, McCain kind of played a little bit of both in Miami. He's been pretty much just a strong safety or free safety for Washington, but
Cameron Curl, Derek Forrest, no, I don't think so. Jeremy Reeves, maybe. He'd be the other one. Yeah.
Jeremy Reeves is kind of a utility guy.
Trey Apke's lucky he's on the team at all. I mean, he's basically solely a special teamer at this point.
They love him for special teams, and I'll be honest, other than his speed, I don't understand it.
Now you're a guy who's studied the special teams film because you love.
I'm a guy who watches it. Yeah, I'm not going to claim to be an expert, but he runs past guys more often than anybody else. Don't run past the ball carrier so much.
Maybe he has naked pictures of Ron Rivera or something.
Well, I was gonna say he was picked by Gruden's staff, so it's got to be of somebody who's been here a while.
But Rivera has kept him though.
Yeah.
Maybe he snapped Rivera in the shower or something.
They love to keep him around. I don't understand it.
I don't know.
Yep.
But we'll get to that next week.
Yeah, we'll dig into the Troy Apke film next week.
No, we won't.
All right. Oh, well, technically, wasn't he moved to corner?
Oh, you're right. Well, I have him still listed as a safety.
So do I, mentally.
Well, on the chart I do, because I think the team still has him listed as a safety. I think that's why I left him as a safety.
But they were talking about moving him to corner at one point.
Yes, they were. Yeah.
Yeah. And it didn't work out because...
Surprise, because he's not that good a player. That's why it didn't work out. He's very fast. Beyond that, not much.
He's basically the Forrest Gump of this roster.
Before we conclude, let's see what Troy Apke looks like, just to make sure it couldn't be Troy Apke. He's also
I didn't even think if it's a picture of my wife with Troy Apke, I don't know if I want to keep it around.
I think the guy in the photo is way too tall for Apke, to be honest.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
Because we're doing this, let's check.
All right, I found his picture on.
That's definitely not Troy Apke.
No. Troy Apke's hair is way too thick for that.
Yeah, look up Cheeseman and you tell me if I'm right.
No, I definitely think Cheeseman. It could be Cheeseman. Just out of who else the heck could it be? If it's
Again, there's not a lot of tall, thin white guys on this team.
No, there just aren't.
It's not Samus Reyes. We know that.
No, it's not Samus Reyes. It's not Jared Patterson.
No.
The
5'7" bowling ball guy, black guy.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's not him.
Yeah. Who's wider, shoulder to the shoulder than that entire tent in the picture?
Yes.
All right, let's say it's Cheeseman.
It has to be Cheeseman.
Yeah. If it's anybody, it's Cheeseman. All right. Okay, guys, that should wrap up this week's show. We will see you next week when we're going to talk about safeties. So, that'll be... Get excited, yes. Some hot Derek Forrest action is what it is.
Oh, my God.
Yes.
Did Alex really say that?
Yeah, why not? All right. Talk to you later.
Hot Derek Forrest action?
Yeah.